Hi, I'm Gina McCarthy, an RN, a perinatal psychotherapist, and the founder of Birth Spirituality and Healing. And I'm so happy to tell you about the Sacred Basket program. Really, what it does is it gives you a way as a perinatal professional and as a human being to reconnect over and over again with your inherent wholeness and to realize how your birth experience, your prenatal experience, your newborn experience is so pivotal to that. And to teach you really, or strengthen what you already know about how to feel safe in your body to open to life, to birth, to love, to wonder. And so it's really giving you a really strong basic foundation. It covers a lot, and I'm going to go into what it covers. So the first course, Cartography of Spiritual and Psychological Growth for Perinatal Professionals. Cartography is map. So it really gives you a map of this way of reconnecting to your wholeness. And everything you learn, of course, you can apply to your clients. And by learning it experientially, that's the strongest way to be able to transmit something to someone else. And so I'm looking at my notes. And so then you look in that map at where is the position of your birth in this way of reconnecting to your life, and you really see how it affects all your patterns and all your clients' patterns. And knowing that, you have more of an understanding of what's working you unconsciously, and you learn ways again to feel safe to see those things. And sometimes those things are these incredible strengths and gifts, and then you have a way of integrating them to empower you even more. Or other times they need resourcing or healing. And one of the things in the further chapters is you learn the difference between what resourcing does and what healing does, which in a nutshell, resourcing really reduces your experience of being triggered right in the moment. And it also connects you with that inherent wholeness strength that we all have. Healing heals the root of what triggers you in the first place and reduces your need actually for resourcing because you're triggered less. Okay. So we look at, I give you a very simple and strong pattern scientifically and experientially and cognitively of how to do that reconnecting practice and process. And then, like I said, you really feel safe to open to your own wholeness and to the wholeness beyond all of us, and to feel prepared to go into the birth field, which is, excuse me, um, a different state of brain waves and consciousness. It's a very vast liminal field, and you by learning how to resource and reconnect your wholeness, you're able to feel grounded and centered to let go to that field and stay present and open and skillful and protected from secondary trauma. Okay. And helping others prevent trauma. So it's really that balance. The course is all about connecting to your strength, your wholeness, your center, preventing trauma, healing trauma, reducing trauma, and then by being centered, being able to open to the gifts that are inherently in the birth field, like wonder and love and pleasure. Okay, so the second chapter, that's the first chapter in the cartography course. The second chapter is ceremony. Ceremony is an incredible vehicle for us that almost all, or possibly all, our original peoples practiced for years, and many of them who are still do. And ceremony is a way to honor. It's not only a resource in itself, it's a vehicle to have our relationship with all our resources. It's a way to slow down and be present with all the resources that are here for us, that in our disconnected culture we often are not relating with, like our earth body, like our ancestors. And of course, I go into ancestors. There's gifts and challenges with ancestors. So we talk a little about that as well, and how to hold that in a way that's honoring your own boundaries and theirs. And also so much to say about ceremony, but something else in that chapter on ceremony, I teach you really, if you want to start doing ceremonies, what are the foundations of a ceremony. And my learning about that came mainly from the Fourfold Way teachings of Angeles Arrien, who was a cross-cultural shamanic teacher and a PhD in anthropology, and the daughter of the chief shaman of her village in the Basque Country. So Angie really taught how these practices are universal practices that stem from all our original peoples. So when I teach you how to develop ceremony that has heart and meaning to honor your own rites of passages, your own needs for spiritual and psychological growth in your clients, it's coming from all our lineages. It's coming from universal practices. Okay, and I teach you always to do what has heart and meaning for you. What are your own beliefs, not mine, because otherwise it's not authentic. And so then in that chapter, I also have a PowerPoint about some of the perinatal ceremonies that have been practiced in different cultures, like from the wonderful book, Welcoming Home Spirit by Sobonfu Somé from the Burkina Faso Dagara tribe. This book is a small book, unfortunately, at the moment, fairly expensive. And it's just, wow, so rich. And what it delineates is the ceremonies they have for the perinatal period in their community. And they're everything that a perinatal psychotherapist would want to develop for a couple. They address all the basic issues. So you get to learn a lot about ceremony. And then in the third chapter, in this course, which is all about building these resources and these practices, you have a guided visualization to your own original gifts that you came into the world with. And that's so important because it not only reconnects you more with your own beauty and purpose here, but it also opens you more to that consciousness with the baby beings that you're helping come into our world, and the recognition that they're all coming with gifts that are needed now. And then there's also a section on your relationship with the earth, and there's practices to really enhance and strengthen that relationship so you can feel it more, and so you can honor it more, and so you can feel the beauty of having a more living engaged relationship with the earth. It's not just words. Okay. And then the last part of this course is I actually offer a ceremony practice with you. So I offered a ceremony practice and I was there for it. And it's every time anybody tunes into it, they can do it with me and have their own ceremony experience to really let you know what that feels like and the strength and beauty of it. Okay, so that's the first course. And then the second course is perinatal trauma assessment, prevention, healing. So the second course you're really getting a review in the beginning of resources and triggers. And so we go more into depth and we dive deeper into all of that. What kind of resources really help someone who maybe had sexual abuse? What kind of resources really are useful for someone who had a neglected childhood? So you start to really get some more this course is the other course gives you a lot of practical things to apply, but this course is more really focused on your work, on preventing trauma in your life and in your client's life, and possibly bringing healing as well. So we review and expand that. And then in the next chapter, we go into root imprints of trauma. So we've done a little of that in the first course, but here we're looking way more at how it plays out for you at work. Like if you had a very traumatic birth, and then you show up and your client is having the same experience. Now, I'm not talking about if you had a traumatic birth giving birth to a child. I'm just talking about if you had a traumatic birth coming into this world. And so that's in your neurobiology and it can get triggered. So we talk about how to work with that. So you're way more really empowered and prepared when you go into the birth field. And again, if you had a great experience being born, we talk about integrating that so you don't project it. Because someone who had a great experience but hasn't integrated it into their consciousness will always think, oh, birth is wonderful, wonderful. But they can project that and not see someone else's reality because they haven't really integrated it so they can connect it with their discernment. Okay, so then we also do some somatic tracking in that second chapter with the root imprints, because that's such an important way of knowing what's happening for you, because the body, like Bessel van der Kolk said, keeps the score. The body is where your unconscious stories live. They live in our neurobiology. And so this particular chapter is very rich, and I'm teaching you how to resource yourself the whole time, and you pause to do that so you're staying connected, because that's the whole point of this, is staying connected for healing, for growth, for any of it, versus if you disconnect and have a big catharsis, it generally just re-traumatizes you. It doesn't really let you grow and integrate. So the somatic tracking is very important, and we do some work with that. And then, as I said, we really look at how all of this shows up in your work with very specific examples. And then we talk about how, and I teach how you can always repair your relationship with your children if you had a traumatic birth. And I had an incredibly beautiful example the other day. So this is like a little sneak preview, where I was teaching another group some of this information. And I said, essentially, even though it's really important to get healing for yourself as a mother first, before you try to do anything to repair your relationship with your child, this mother, just in her heart, I had said, but when you're ready at any time, you can say to your child could be 3 months, 3 years, 30 years old, so on. At any time, you can say, I'm so sorry for what happened to you in your birth. And I know it was hard, and I love you. And so you're really, the energy of it is you're really validating what happened. And then they feel that. And in this example, when I was teaching the class, this woman said in her heart, please, to her little toddler child, please forgive me for, that's how she put it, please forgive me for what a hard time you went through in your birth. I love you. And the child came into the room right at that moment and petted her hair and said, I just came in to tell you I love you, Mommy. So this energy healing, we go into the science of it, but it's wonderful. And in a way, I love that story so much because it's the whole point of all of this in a way, is to open up our relationships for that relaxed love that we're all capable of with each other and our children. Okay, so now, and then we talk about the difference between healing and resourcing and how to mitigate trauma, and how, sometimes none of this is black and white or pure logic, but it's more circular. But sometimes you have so many resources, you might have had a previous trauma, but you don't feel it because you've really mitigated a lot of it. And mitigation is different than healing, and we talk about that. So anyway, then we get into assessment. Assessment is the third chapter. And here I give you a lot of trauma-informed tips about how to assess without triggering people, and respecting if they've had trauma. And also a lot about giving psycho education around psychological education. There's a phrase for that that I can't quite find right this second, about trauma for the client. So particularly, we talk about it in general, but also particularly we go into clients who have had sexual abuse histories, because that's, of course, so common in our community. And so there's a lot you can do to help a woman who hasn't had healing, but has had a sexual abuse history. There's a lot you can do to educate and prepare her so she can feel safe and empowered. And we go into that. But I also go into boundaries, because if you've had sexual abuse and you haven't had healing yet, you really want to look at what you're comfortable with and what you need support and healing for. And you want to look at all of that with great kindness and respect for yourself. So we go into that. So because we're all people, I wrote that down. I say that a lot. We're all human. Okay, so then I also go into strategies for working with triggered clients and old trauma and current trauma. And then advocacy. I don't go into you should all be advocates, but what I do say is part of being kind and truthful with yourself. If you work as a birth worker at this time at any time really, but certainly now at this time in our history, part of that is that unfortunately, the system, at least in this country for sure, is still run on greed. And even though they say they're nonprofit, it's a very profit-oriented, healthcare business. So staffing is not appropriate for our biorhythms or for what's happening, the sacred birth field in the hospitals and so on. And even somewhat in all our lives, it's out of balance. And so it's very important to know that, and not like, oh my God, I should have been kind to everyone all day long. You're a human being. And particularly, though it's true in general, an 8-hour shift in the hospital is not set up for human beings, as a healthcare worker. So you're running around and so on. So you really want to recognize that as part of your self-compassion and not discount that. And okay, 4. So the last part of this is ways of prevention and healing. And so I go into different ways of healing trauma, because that is a huge prevention for repeated trauma, is to heal past trauma. And then I also go into a healing birth circle model for moms that I developed. And I go into all, excuse me, the components of it. And so you can really see what a healing model looks like and what needs to be in a healing model for it to be effective. So that is a little bit of a description of the Sacred Basket program. I'm in California right now, and there's fires right now. So there's smoke in the air, even with the windows closed. So I'm coughing a lot. I'm going to take a sip of tea. So I want to encourage you to be compassionate to yourself. And you can download a self-compassion practice on my website, birthspiritualityandhealing.com. And you can also register and learn more about the Sacred Basket program there. And you can also go to gena-school.thinkific.com to register for these courses. If you take both courses and you sign up before August 29th, 2020, then you get free 9-month, 1-hour practice and Q&A sessions with me. If you sign up after, there's a fee for the circles, excuse me, but you still get to have those 9-month circles, which really allow you to stabilize these practices and to really, over 9 months, experience some transformation in your own self-compassion and effectiveness with yourself and others. I want to see if there's anything else I want to say to you right now. I think that gives you enough information about the program, and I'm very honored and grateful to be with you, to work with you, to know you're out there doing your own beautiful heart work that makes such a difference in our world. Thank you.